Well, hello, that's me again. Today is April 25th, and it's Tuesday. And I want to start with kind of follow up a little bit on the what I was talking about last in my last video, specifically about the panel by Congresswoman. Actually, she wasn't senator; she was Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman, and the group which was dealing with the Nazi crimes in the United States, and it was called Interagency Working Group. And look what, for some people started to react on the discussion board that, well, yeah, Americans were employing those Germans, and that's true to a degree. But I posted somewhere that let's kind of face the reality of that time. While the United States definitely had some plans, even before the end of the World War II, on their intelligence services, such as Gestapo, such as the SD of Germany, you have to understand that at that time the United States were basically newcomers to this game, while in reality, when you look at the operations of SD or Gestapo, within, obviously Gestapo was a political police, and SD, they had the internal and external departments, with Schellenberg being in charge of the foreign intelligence, for example. You will recognize that the United States were basically amateurs compared to those guys. And yes, they wanted it the same as they wanted to have their, obviously, German engineers. Soviet Union also got some of them, but primarily most of them, namely technical documentation for the FA1, V1, V2s, and the key engineers of the German rocket program. Of course, we can remember all Werner von Braun, who is the father of American space program. So they all ended up in the United States. Everybody forget that also Werner von Braun was the cadre officer of the SS. But it's not what is important here. What is important here is the fact that Gehlen and his organization, they were playing Americans like a flute, or like an organ, if you wish. And look what, for example, you will find if you go to such places like National Security Archive. It's called the CIA, Nazi War Criminals. It is the National Security Archive electronic briefing book number 146, and it was on February 4, 2005. As you might expect, CIA didn't like what was declassified and exposed in it, but it is what it is. You can easily visit it, and you will see yourself an absolute treasure trove of the documents, which demonstrate who and how most of those SS and SD officers obviously have been war criminals. They have been employed and used by the United States of America at the end of the war. You obviously can also take a look and visit this National Archives Nazi War Crimes Interagency Working Group, and you can find a lot of information there on the declassified documents, which for people who really want to invest a little bit of time will completely change your perspective on what is going on, what was going on then and during the Cold War, and what is going on now. But just to demonstrate to you also what kind of impact of this, you might visit and read Institute for Policy Studies. This was published in the consortium news, and it is also used in my book, one of my books, namely first one. Look at this. This is what is described, the activity of the Gehlen org, sitting ducks for disinformation. And look at this. General Gehlen frequently exaggerated the Soviet threat in order to exacerbate tensions between the superpowers. At one point, he succeeded in convincing General Lucius Clay, military governor of the U.S. zone of occupation in Germany, that a major Soviet war mobilization had begun in Eastern Europe. This prompted Clay to dash off a frantic top-secret telegram to Washington in March 1948, warning that the war may come with dramatic suddenness. Well, guess what? As one of the people from interagency speaks, the agency loved Gehlen because he fed us what he wanted to hear. We used this stuff constantly, and we fed it to everyone else. The Pentagon, the White House, the newspapers, they loved it too. But it was hyped up Russian bogeyman junk, and it did a lot of damage to this country. A retired CIA officer told Arthur Christopher Simpson, who also serves on the Interagency Working Group review panel and was the author of the Blowback, America's Recruitment of Nazis and Its Effects on the Cold War. And that is why when people say, and I hear many people constantly saying that, oh yeah, United States was basically an enemy and this and that, and yeah, that's true. We know what is happening with the United States today. But the problem, of course, was the fact that United States was manipulated. It's political, always subpar, always badly educated, always badly cultured. The political elite, decision-making circles, it's military. They have been manipulated on believing into this, as the CIA officer says, And when you look at this and just, the roots of the Cold War, and especially huge manipulations during this Cold War with exaggeration or threat exaggeration. Does it ring a bell? Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. This is all came through with the German Nazi officers from those SD and Gestapo and what have you intelligence circles, which have been completely incorporated into American intelligence structures at the end of the World War II and through the Cold War. And then when you ask that what is going on, well, there you go. We live with the heritage of that. So I wanted to address this issue. Now a little bit to something which is, it unfolds with an incredible speed. And let me put it this way. We will start with the thing which absolutely crucial. If you go to Mr. Medvedev's responses today about when he was speaking about what is called the knowledge marathon, look what he stated. And remind you, he is former president of Russian Federation and he's deputy secretary of Russia's Security Council. He is an extremely powerful man. And look at this. What he stated, that title is that Medvedev called the silent partition, silent alternative to the entrance of Ukraine to NATO, and he stated, I will kind of express my very dubious thought. It's better the silent partition of Ukraine than Ukraine in NATO, which will mean the Third World War. And he, of course, explains it. What does he mean? And guess what? It is about Poland getting the Western Ukraine, what is called Vostochny Kresy. And as I already stated, if Poland would have behaved itself, and I spoke about it year ago at the start of special military operation, and I spoke to this with Anya and other people I spoke on YouTube, on the podcast, that if Poland would have behaved itself properly, less aggressive, less suicidal at the start of special military operation, there would have been actually almost quiet, giving up the Western Ukraine, because Russia doesn't need Western Ukraine. They hate Russians there. You're not gonna basically reprogram them. They will continue to hate, and it's a separate issue why they are such a way. But so in this stage, basically Medvedev gives the green light, and that means Medvedev never speaks just from himself. He gives a green light that, go partition it in terms of the Western Ukraine. Nobody need it. And I think so we give and we get this kind of the shape, if you wish, a silhouette of Ukrainian partition with this statement. So, and I think so Russia will continue with the pressing on the issue of obtaining the land bridge between Kherson and Transnistria by the way of Nikolaev and Odessa, and whatever will be left from Ukraine, I mean, yeah, it's going to be completely demilitarized. It's going to be the agrarian country, and whatever the population will be, 7-8 million maybe. So it will represent no danger for Russia. So this is very important. But of course, as everybody understands that American media, they wouldn't be American media if they wouldn't continue to lie. But obviously, as a metadata for any kind of communications, you can always take a look at this and like, yeah, I wonder what they were talking about or want to say. Here it is. This is what is called one of those propaganda outlets. It is Washington Post, which yesterday breaks the news that at U.S. behest, Ukraine held off anniversary attacks on Russia. What is this all about? Okay, here they explain. Kiev's head of military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, planned bold strikes deep behind enemy lines that unnerved officials in Washington. First, it's obviously a lie, as you might understand, because United States actually gave the green light for the strikes inside Russia. In fact, they support those strikes, but something changed. The tone changes. So Vapo continues. Washington Post. And classified report from U.S. National Security Agency officials even mused about a sea-based strike using TNT in the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, a largely symbolic operation that would nevertheless demonstrate Ukrainians' ability to hit deep inside enemy territory. Well, as anything that armed forces of Ukraine and Pentagon and CIA do in Ukraine, it is about PR, but suddenly they say, oh, no, we were against it. Well, sure you were against it. It's like, you know what, it's explaining to a child that Santa Claus is coming about right now and will give their presents, when in reality, obviously, all those strikes are sanctioned. And as you heard yourself probably a couple days ago, they tried again those surface drones attacking Sevastopol. Obviously, drones have been annihilated. But when anybody talks about that, oh yeah, United States was trying to prevent those strikes, oh please, I mean, this is ridiculous. And to complete this garbage, Washington Post closes it with the crescendo of the baloney, which is Ukraine, eager to bring the fight to Russia's home turf, is sometimes restrained by the United States, which has tried to avoid escalating the conflict into a direct fight between U.S. and Russian forces. Some U.S. officials see attacks on Russia, particularly if they involve U.S. supplied weapons, as highly risky operations that Russian President Vladimir Putin could find so threatening that he resorts to using tactical nuclear weapons. The whole paragraph here is, every word of it is complete lie, because obviously they need to admit that Russia doesn't need tactical nuclear weapons to basically obliterate not only Ukrainian forces, but any kind of NATO forces in Ukraine. But obviously they, for some reason, Washington Post begins to, sing this song that, hey, look at us, we are actually good guys in this fight. Of course, it's complete baloney, but they try to present it. Why they try to present it? Well, as Mr. Rybkov actually stated, reacting to this garbage from Washington Post, and American media usually post garbage, and we know that, he stated that Moscow, reacting to this piece in Washington Post, it looks like a complete disinformation. Russia reacted to this nonchalantly, and he stated that United States are the party to the conflict. They are engaged in a direct hybrid war against Russia. So nobody reacted in Russia with any interest to all these Washington Post descriptions, because it's, as I already stated, complete garbage. But it is indicative garbage, because it shows the change of the mood, and change of the mood is ongoing for the last few weeks. And now we have this political article which everybody is talking about, that Biden's team fears the aftermaths of a failed Ukrainian counteroffensive, and what they say, Ukraine's spring counteroffensive falls, if Ukraine's counteroffensive falls short of expectations, critics at home and allies abroad will argue that America has come up short too. I have the question to those people in Washington and who published this trash, basically. Can they show me any occasion on which America didn't come out short? I mean, I don't remember in the last 25 years anything of this nature. It was always coming short because obviously they don't understand what strategic planning is. They don't know how to fight war. Now, Politica warns about the fact that counteroffensive may fall short. It's not may fall short, it's will fall short, because obviously from any point of view, in order for you to have a serious counteroffensive or offensive action, you have to have reserves. You have to have this train, logistical train, which pushes your forces ahead. And the fact that Ukraine may accumulate 200 tanks means absolutely nothing, because obviously, and that's where the whole thing begins to make no sense whatsoever. Who announces, as many people already noticed, your strategic actions in advance? Unless, of course, it is the misinformation, but then again, it immediately will be treated as misinformation once you announce that you are going to do something. Russians keep, for example, silent. They don't even speak anything about what they are going to do and how they are going to do. But as even Colonel Douglas McGregor testifies, that Pentagon knows that there are around 700,000 Russian troops strung along the front, somewhere in the rear. What they're waiting for? Well, your guess as good as mine, but as you understand, Russians are indeed very good at counteroffensives, and especially if anybody remembers such things as Stalingrad, Kursk, and other things of this nature, where Russians basically met the Wehrmacht head-on, and then, of course, went those classic pincer movements. So just, I throw stuff at the, at the wall and see what sticks. So, but if that wasn't bad enough, of course, there is another thing which is beginning to absolutely bother not only Washington, but obviously the Europeans themselves. And look at this. As one of the 2 days ago, one of the leading business publications in Germany, The Pioneer, they published this piece of article which is called "Kiev, Is This a New Kabul?" And then they basically proceeded to declare that there are two types of news for the whole Western world. One is it good news, sort of, as they state that the peace may be closer for Ukraine than we might expect. The bad news, of course, that Russia will dictate what she wants and what kind of peace that will be. Well, they do understand what the kind of peace it will be. And again, as I already stated, and Mr. Medvedev's statement today is kind of interesting. Yeah, let's partition of Ukraine is in plans. And now the reaction of the Beltway and Washington, who obviously the reality begins to dawn on them, and I'm talking about military reality. And you have to remember, I repeat it again, so anybody who doesn't like that, I repeat it again, you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. But I will repeat it again. Neither American media nor think tankdom know what modern war is, let alone, of course, political top and Washington and all those generals. They never experienced anything like this. And as I already pointed out before in my previous video, they thought they learned from the war, or about the war, from the Wehrmacht experience, which formed basically their view of the reality. Obviously, they never cared about studying what Russians do in terms of warfare and how those damn Ruskies managed to defeat the strongest army in the history. In fact, is packed with lies. Well, they should have asked the questions, but they believed that they won, they defeated Hitler. So, and when you have the reality distorted to such a degree, what do you expect? You get Vietnam, you get Iraq, you get Afghanistan. So, and there you go. And now suddenly they have this issue of, oh my God, we have this reality dawning on us. And if this wasn't bad, we have this other thing. So, and this is the issue of India just absolutely buying Russian Urals. I mean, non-stop, and India accounted for 70% of Urals shipment in April. And as Indians stated, and which is a very good middle finger and FU to the West, nobody stops us buying Russian oil at above the price cap level provided. We are not using Western service. India's oil secretary, Pankaj Jain, said at the events carried by Reuters. Yes, those Indians, they are free to do what they want to do because, well, whatever India flaws, and some of them are major flaws India has, it is growing and gigantic economy. I dare to say that actually India is a larger economy than the United States, despite India being generally poor. But we have to remember the size of India. It's 4 times larger than the United States, at least. And as a result, the overall totality of its industrial productive economy is much larger than that of the United States. Then, of course, we have China speaking about Urals, who says, China buys more Urals crude on track to hit 11 months high. And these are all yesterday's news. They just pour into Washington, and they have the issues with handling them. And here it is. While the debate about the effectiveness of the Western-led sanctions on Russia continues, well, I don't know what this Julian Giger, I don't know how to pronounce her name, talks about. There is no any debate on the effectiveness of Western-led sanctions in the rest of the world. Those sanctions are debated only within this narrow group, which is not anymore dominant in any sense of Western countries and the United States. The Russians don't care about those sanctions. They just go on their own, as any superpower will do. So does China, so does India, and so does pretty much the rest of the world. So there is no debate in the rest of the world. If, of course, the political scientists and all those kinds of the sinecure abusers which sit in the Council of Foreign Relations and in all kinds of other think tanks wants to debate it, who am I to say them to not to? They can debate whatever they want. Reality is a very interesting thing in bites, and so if they want to debate it, sure, let them. But then, of course, we have the even better situation and the what is called the speculation on the possibility of the oil for $200 per barrel. And again, they talk about 4 scenarios that could send oil price to 200. I'm not oil specialist. I don't think so it will go to 200, but it will be very high. And one of the kind of give these 4 scenarios. If you look at those scenarios, this major Ukraine escalation, I don't know what major Ukraine escalation is. Beyond that, if the NATO wants to get involved, it will be obliterated. And if they want to start World War III, then it will be absolutely meaningless to count what price of oil. So then, of course, they go and talk about more OPEC plus cuts. Yeah, sure. The oil market goes as Russia and Saudi Arabia go. Then, of course, number 3, Russian production cuts. Yes, Russians can easily and painlessly cut the production if need be. And then comes the underinvestment. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, they consider, those things. They contemplate. But what can I say? It's the reality. And again, nothing they can do. And that brings us to a little bit of the military porn, and guess what? Yes, yet again, the absolute incompetence of people, not only in the West, Russian journalists and so-called pretend think tanks, they suffer from the same mental syphilis because they employ people who are not military professionals, who do not understand modern geopolitics. And fact is, they do not even understand modern economy, yet those people are also trying to sell themselves as the experts. And so here it is. Somebody, well, specifically speaking, it was TASS which made the erroneous statement about the fact that maybe the Peter the Great nuclear-powered cruisers will be basically decommissioned and scrapped because it's allegedly very expensive to maintain and upgrade or modernize, as was done to the Admiral Nahimov, which should be rejoining the fleet next year and is already fully under power from the shore. And as Mr. Rachmanov, who is of course big honcho in the United Shipbuilding Corporations or Corporation, pardon me, of Russia, already stated that the cruiser will rejoin the fleet in 2024, and it's already will soon start what is called the mooring tests, which are tests at the pier. So we know this situation with Admiral Nahimov. Peter the Great was supposed to go and start the modernization, and then suddenly we have this issue from TASS, which is erroneously reports on it. Immediately, Newsweek starts to spread this and saying that Russia might be forced to send the flagship battle cruiser Pyotr Veliki to the scrap yard as the cost of maintenance and modernization is deemed too high, state media agency TASS reported this week. Sure, they were following Russia's state media. What they didn't follow was the fact that this piece of news, which waxes geopolitical, was by the guy by the name of Yevgeny Kuklichov. He's Russian 20 years ago, because he's still boy, I'm pretty sure, was moved probably with his parents, I don't know, maybe whoever they were. And look at his background. Look at this. So yeah, he graduated University of Warwick with BA with honors in English and comparative studies. Look what his background is. Its modules included European theater studies, Shakespeare and selected dramatists, and 17th century literature and culture. Yes, this is the guy who writes about Peter the Great, and he waxes the whole article is hilarious because it's written by amateurs. The same as many Russian amateurs, media amateurs started to comment on it, until obviously the same day RIA News comes out with this. And RIA News is essentially also state-run, well, not quite state-run, but they are official establishment media. What they come out is say, the source, there is no plan to remove Peter the Great or decommission it and to scrap it. It's absolute rumors, and he stated that this source states, and RIA reports it, that actually everything as planned. Basically, first, once Nahimov goes out into the fleet, Peter the Great will be withdrawn from the service, which is normal for the modernized ships. It will wash out for a little bit, and then of course it will go into the modernization phase, and that also gets, so to speak, very well and plays very well together with the latest Russian naval doctrine, which was adopted on July 31st last year and signed by Mr. Putin. And anybody who read this naval doctrine, they will understand that Russia changed its posture from sea denial. They want actually the sort of sea control, which in Russian called as благоприятный оперативный режим, which is a favorable operational regime across the whole world ocean. Because, as naval doctrine of Russia states openly, the main threat to the world and to Russia are United States. So, guess what? No matter how you play the economics of the other huge and massively powerful ship being expensive to maintain and being a unique, there are only two of them like that in the world, and not making sense of basically to modernize it. Reality, of course, is such that Peter the Great, the same as Nahimov, those guys carry 176 cells. 80 cells for the strike weapons and 96 or 94, I believe, cells for the air defense. Altogether, it carries up to 500 missiles. And it's a state-of-the-art advanced modernization of fully computer-driven cruisers. And when you look at this, yeah, with the ability to carry Zircon or 3M14M with the range of 4,500 kilometers, which, by the way, now evidently it also could be used as anti-shipping missile, Well, you can only imagine how important those ships become as the power projection tool, especially in the large oceanic spaces, and defending, of course, Russia's lanes, shipping lanes of communications against all kinds of contingencies. Who knows what the United States and NATO will decide to do? They can do some stupid things, obviously. So there you go. So Ezria already debunked those news. We just have to wait and see when Peter the Great, which I already stated, most likely 2024, will be withdrawn from service, will be put at the pier, wash out for a couple of months before they form their what is called the repair teams, and then it will start this long modernization, whatever, couple 3 years, but by the time it will come out, the same as Nakhimov, it will be the most powerful ship in the world. And no, don't give me this aircraft carrier thing, because I mean, aircraft carrier won't even see such ships as Admiral Nakhimov when it's going to attack. And so that's what is this all about. But it also underscores my constant statements about necessity to be very cautious with the media, especially in the modern world, when majority of people in the media, they only care about the story, and most of them, those journalists, so to speak, who love to break stories, they are ignorant people. They do not understand what they are talking about. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you about today, and what can I say? I want to again provide or express my profound thanks to my sponsors and patrons who support me for doing what I am doing. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel and support me through Patreon. And have a nice rest of the day, guys. I'll talk to you probably on Thursday. So bye bye.